I think we've all seen the infamous 3x3 DnD alignment before in our lives. If you've ever played any RPGs, you know that this thing is the original kin list that existed for decades. If you get someone's DnD alignment wrong, you tend to be crucified and hung on the stake. So obviously, today we're going to use this to define Genshin Impact characters because, why not? Welcome to Genshin characters in the alignment chart. I actually want to integrate more DnD and Genshin content together and make this weird hybrid of content. So let's start with this topic. This is part 1 of a series, and the flow is basically this. I'll only cover 10 characters per video. I'm not going to just say their alignment, but also give my own reasons for it based on their lore. Also, because morality is vague and very undefined in Dungeons & Dragons, I will give 2 different alignments per character to try and see different sides of the argument. A good character should never be one-dimensional anyway. So today, I'll be covering the Genshin characters under the classification of gods or abominations. Since I'm only limiting myself to 10, I'll be covering the other divine-blooded characters in the second part. So let's begin. For those that don't know the 3x3 grid of alignment, the alignment consists of 2 words. The lawfulness spectrum dictates how willing are you to follow a code. Lawful means you usually stick to a code dearly, while chaotic means that anything goes and you feel like your codes are flexible. The goodness spectrum is how willing are you to do good for the betterment of others. Just because you do good deeds doesn't mean you're good. Good characters aren't perfect Samaritans, but they consider the ultimate good in what they do. On the other hand, evil characters will actively seek out ways to make other people's lives miserable. In the middle of the spectrum are the neutrals. As a disclaimer, none of these terms are meant to insult, degrade, or demean a character. The beauty of a character is their complexity, which is something I want to explore. So let's begin. Albedo. Lawful good or lawful neutral? Albedo's quiet and timid nature breaks a lot from the stereotypical good Samaritan trope, but Albedo himself has been chivalrous and protective of the people around him. His lawful good alignment may seem like a questionable thing to begin with, since he does seem apathetic at times to people that he doesn't care about, but he's also very willing to sacrifice himself for others. His attention span may not like you, but his morality does. He jumped after Bennett when Bennett fell from the avalanche in 2.3, he has been a doting brother to Klee and has helped with the Golden Apple Archipelago, and he's been trying to be a good friend to others despite not necessarily understanding human communication. Albedo himself is very socially awkward and difficult to understand at times, which may be why he borders between neutral and good, but we can't deny that he always tries his best to be amicable with the people around him. As for the lawful, this is where we dive into the more intricate nuances of Albedo as a character. Albedo is a homunculus or a synthetic human, meaning that he was a creation and his purpose is subservience. He has always followed his master's orders from the very beginning of his creation, and even until now, his mission to find the truth of the world is something he does not waver from. He's someone that follows the principles his master left behind to a T, constantly telling the traveler stories of alchemy that were from his master. One of the things Rhindaughter left behind was a manuscript known as the Opus Magnum, which is most likely something that Albedo uses to framework most of his alchemical endeavors. Albedo is lawful because he abides by the code his master left behind, and to the bitter end, he still follows it, despite not truly understanding her intentions. SCARAMOUCHE or Kunikuzushi, chaotic evil, chaotic neutral. Understand this and understand this well. Scaramouche is a clear example of the fact that the alignment chart does not justify through backstory. There is no husk of opulent dream sorrow that can spare Scaramouche from the alignment of evil or neutral. The alignment chart is simply based on their current actions and their motivations. Evil in this context comes from his unprecedented actions of cruelty to those around him. Evil in the alignment chart goes through many ways, but it's that reaction after committing that evil that is also very telling of one's alignment. His personality isn't the rough basis of this. Grumpy or antisocial characters can be good, but instead, it's the way he treats others. Enemy or ally, Scaramouche is antagonistic and will not hesitate to inflict pain upon those just for his curiosity. He was active in the deaths in the Watatsumi resistance army because of the delusions, and even relishes in their deaths, saying that it's just how the world works. He shows no empathy to them because human life to him is short and fleeting. He was also willing to lie to the traveler to hurt them in 1.1 story event, but what really makes me consider the alignment is his own treatment of soldiers. Not only is he a hated Fatui Harbinger to work under, but we see his cruelty to those that are just breathing the same air as him. In the Husk of Opulent Dreams, he slaps a man just to see the confusion on his face. He also slaughtered several generations of blacksmiths out of revenge, and simply stopped because he thought it was dull. He also left SIGNORA behind and fled with the Gnosis. I was considering neutral as the second one just because neutral means that you don't care what you have to do. Neutral is no better than evil in this context, because neutral for Scaramouche would be the equivalent of staying by the side as he watches someone die. Scaramouche does have a code of morals in a way. While he's an asshole to almost everyone, he doesn't lash out on a grandmother that just asks where it's headed. But that really isn't enough to sway the spectrum, and the alignment chart doesn't care about organizations either, so just because he left the Fatui doesn't mean that he'll be considered good. As for chaotic, well, Scaramouche doesn't have a strict moral obligation to anything except himself. Hell, he even loathes the idea of being someone's puppet, saying that no man nor god can judge him. According to the Husk of Opulent Dreams, his actions are based on curiosity and impulse. We also see how willing he was to betray the Fatui for the Gnosis, meaning that Scaramouche's moral code doesn't adhere to the Fatui's either. He's just letting the wind blow. Venti. Neutral good, lawful good. Here's an interesting take. Venti himself may seem like a character that just goes with the wind and is very carefree, but we're considering morality and not personality. Venti is a good example of personality does not equate morality. If you examine his actions, he follows a set of moral strictures for himself, especially regarding his helping of Mondstadt. Venti's internal laws revolve around simply helping Mondstadt when it's needed and staying on the side to let it grow when it's safe. While Venti's words say that he doesn't care for Mondstadt and that it's Mondstadt's people that has to deal with the problems, Venti does leave behind those prejudices when their people need a god. He wakes up to fight Durian, he frees Mondstadt from the aristocracy and helps them against Ursa the Drake, and he even helps against Storm Terror. Venti is still very much committed to helping Mondstadt as the home he wishes it to be, and his will has been consistently unshaken. He even goes as far as to celebrate the little nuances of Mondstadt's culture, and even sabotages a Ludihar Pastime event when he finds out that the people changed the rules for the sake of abusing their power. Venti is willing to step in to preserve order when it comes to it. There are times that he just takes a neutral stance on things and just claims that he lets the wind lead. Venti is a god of action who has helped and protected Mondstadt in the background. SIGNORA. Lawful evil, neutral evil. Let's talk about SIGNORA. When I say that she's lawful evil, it means that she's very loyal to the decree of the Tsaritsa, all while willing to harm and jeopardize the lives of others for the sake of the Fatui's goals. Remember, she was the one in charge of the tax changes in Rito during the Inazuma Archon quest, and the Fatui were spearheading the Vision Hunt decree in the background. SIGNORA was also known to use lethal force against her own subordinates according to Tartaglia. In the Pale Flame set, she says that she wishes to serve under the Tsaritsa because she follows the same goals as her, and this reflects well with how she let Tartaglia be a pawn in the Liyue Osayo situation. The word lawful in SIGNORA's case is her utmost loyalty. Now, I did want to consider neutral evil in the context of her actions. SIGNORA has been a passive character that always just says she follows the Tsaritsa and nothing more. While that is very lawful, her way of just letting both enemy and ally die for the Tsaritsa's cause can be seen as neutral. The Gnosis dealings were conducted with the Tsaritsa's orders, and the Inazuma Archon quest may just be her not really caring about who dies in the end as long as the Fatui get what they need. Though I am still leaning with lawful evil given her dedication to the Tsaritsa's goals. And again, we cannot consider the Crimson Witch lore as anything in the alignment chart. We're only concerned with who SIGNORA was as a person by the time we met her, and the actions she has done in the current story. But just a reminder, not everyone starts as a villain. XIAO. Lawful good. I don't even want to put a second one for XIAO. XIAO is a true embodiment of unrelenting and unconditional lawfulness. Despite all the hardships in his life, XIAO has consistently been fighting and upholding the morals of Rex Lapis, and even chastises anyone that speaks ill of the cultures of the Adepti because he believes that's disrespectful to the other gods who have died. XIAO is the embodiment of sacrifice, loyalty, and resilience. Centuries of karma and performing a thankless task of protecting the citizens of Liyue is the real meaning of lawful good. Tartaglia. This is going to be difficult, but I believe he is true neutral, lawful neutral. I was originally considering him as lawful evil, lawful neutral, but then I realized that the goodness and evilness spectrum also abides by intentions. This is why I had to consider Scaramouche as evil as well as SIGNORA. Tartaglia is a very straightforward character in terms of motivation. Therefore, Tartaglia is the embodiment of lawful neutral for the sole reason that as long as you're against him and his morals, you're a threat. But if you're not a threat, then he has no reason to hurt you, and he won't. Lawful neutral is an alignment that teeters between lawful good and evil, making it one of the most difficult alignments to roleplay properly. That's because imagine this. You're following a code and decree that you personally believe in. How do you justify being neutral if what you believe in may be for the greater good or the greater evil? It's not really that simple, right? That's the complexity of the alignment chart. Tartaglia is the prime example of teetering on that balance act. I am not justifying his crimes in Liyue, but I am also not dismissing his role as a big brother. So let's break that down. Lawful is simple to justify, because he has always been deathly loyal to the Tsaritsa and her ideals. But Tartaglia has another code that motivates him every day, his ode to strength and conquering the world. He wants to keep getting stronger and keep fighting to improve. That's a code that drives him to satiate that bloodlust. But Tartaglia also teeters on neutrality. He doesn't use lethal force on those he deems as allies, and doesn't immediately fight those that aren't threats to those ideals. Tartaglia's neutrality shines in two ways. One is that he doesn't care who you are unless you're a fighter or you oppose the Fatui's goals. Two is that he will treat you with respect unless you give him a reason not to. I think one of the best ways for me to summarize Tartaglia's morality is to quote, "Nothing personal, kid." Yanfei, lawful good. Now here's something hilarious. You would think I would put lawful good because Yanfei abides by the laws and is a legal advisor. Nope. Yanfei herself says that the laws are meant to protect the greater good and are flexible, therefore one shouldn't just stick with the laws from the book, but also apply it in the real world for the sake of helping others. So you would think that should make her chaotic good, since she's going against the aspect of legal laws. Well, not really either, because the lawful here isn't her loyalty to the code, but instead to the philosophy I just mentioned above about how laws are supposed to protect. She studied these laws to find the loophole for the common people, making it her personal motivation or law. Therefore, lawful good. ZHONGLI, lawful neutral, true neutral. ZHONGLI's actions in the game have always teetered on doing what's best for the people and doing what's best in accordance to his ideal. The lawfulness is self-explanatory. ZHONGLI is the god of contracts, and he would never let those contracts be jeopardized. But I believe that maybe neutral is the better alignment instead of saying lawful good. ZHONGLI as the god of contracts cannot take a side, but instead respect wholeheartedly an agreement between two individuals. While ZHONGLI's personality is compassionate and caring, his morality is not completely aligned with doing good just for the sake of doing good. The reason I'm putting neutral is because, in his eyes, everyone should follow the contract. But there are some actions of ZHONGLI that would seem like he's betraying the contract with Celestia as an Archon or breaking his lawful nature. For example, giving his gnosis to the Tsaritsa. But I feel like this moment here was never a breach of contract, and that there's no formal agreement that all current Archons must keep their gnosis. VENTI isn't too alarmed that his was taken away, and A, despite being Makoto's successor, doesn't use the gnosis for herself and instead keeps it away. Whatever ZHONGLI did might legally still be allowed, hence he doesn't break from his ideal. Also, I think one important factor that splits ZHONGLI from lawful evil is his intention. He never really intends to hurt anyone unless it's punishment for the contract, because in the end, he believes that the contract is a sacred agreement that both parties agreed to. Additionally, he does express worry and regret about having to follow contracts all the time, even to those that he holds dearly. This is clear with the way he apologizes to the Traveler about being unable to tell them about their sibling, and how he was also willing to step in to fight Osial in the event that the Liyue Chising and the Adepti failed. It goes to show you that the word lawful in ZHONGLI's story may not only just be about contracts, but also keeping Liyue Harbor safe. GANYU, lawful good, neutral good. GANYU herself is a proud half-Adepti, willing to learn and adapt to the centuries of cultures that the Adepti left behind. But GANYU is also human. Human in the way she feels and thinks, so much so that she integrates herself amongst humanity despite her divine blood. GANYU is dedicated to her mission for Rex Lapis, and her responsibility as a Liyuean political figure. Everything she does is for the betterment of the nation, and if XIAO takes care of demons to keep others safe, she does the more human aspect of keeping Liyue safe. Paperwork, politics, management, those are very mundane things that can get looked over. But GANYU understands how important running Liyue Harbor properly is. Liyue is her home, and it is one she is willing to sacrifice herself and her time for. A. Now, A out of all the characters in this list has gone through the most character change, making her the most developed. This development also means that there's a shift in alignment, which is great. Shifts in alignments mean that a character went through an important change, and is facing whiplash of that character development, good to evil or evil to good. So let's begin with Archon Quest A. I believe that A's actions in the Archon quests are lawful neutral. Some might say that it should be lawful evil or neutral evil, but let's dissect it further. Her actions did jeopardize her whole nation and caused so much harm and suffering to the people around her. But we need to understand the Vision Hunt decree from her perspective. There's a misconception that A killed Kazuha's friend in cold blood, which isn't true. Kazuha's friend challenged her before the throne, and Kujosara accepted in the behalf of the shogun. While this is a death, it was not a murder. This was also what happened with SIGNORA, and even A says it herself. She believes that it's the people who fight for their ideals that die on the battlefield, but those that have their visions stripped from them are, at the very least, to her, not dead. To her, it was a necessity, an action done for the betterment of Inazuma and something that was motivated by her grief. She wholeheartedly believed that this was the way Inazuma should remain if it wishes to become eternal. Is this a flawed philosophy? Absolutely, but it roots from the intentions of her actions. She wants to protect Inazuma. In her eyes, what she did is right and lawful, because this is the ultimate embodiment of her ideal, eternity. However, we know that it isn't, and we know that Inazuma greatly suffered for her decree, and she realized that. A post-Archon quest and her character story is neutral good, true neutral. Instead of abiding by her principles of eternity and what she believes as eternal, she instead accepts that Inazuma is very much human and have her own conception of eternity despite their lives being fleeting. Eternity to her is no longer a drive that must be pursued at all costs, which is something that the Raiden Shogun contested, but instead, to A, eternity is a flexible concept and can be embodied in many ways. Times are changing, but it is also the same for Inazuma. A has yet to understand what true eternity is, but she is willing to make exceptions for the good of the people, for the heart of the people. But yes, here you go, part 1 of the Genshin DnD alignment, and there will be a lot more to come. I understand that these alignments are not set in stone because the alignment chart is one of the most debated things in the world. But yes, I am planning to cover more Dungeons & Dragons content in this channel and mixing it with Genshin Impact. I've been taking a break from lore for a bit because I'm a bit worn down from theory crafting. It happens, so I'm trying a new form of content. If you want to learn more about Dungeons & Dragons, feel free to subscribe to this channel or follow me on Twitch. But nevertheless, my name is Aster and thank you for chilling with me.